student. Today I am going to explain class 9 political science chapter 1. What is democracy? Why democracy? First we will be learning the first part. What is democracy? In what is democracy, we will be learning a simple definition of democracy and the four features of democracy. A simple definition of democracy. Democracy is a form of government in which the rulers are elected by the people. This is a useful starting point. This definition allows us to separate democracy from forms of government that are clearly not democratic. The army rulers of Myanmar were not elected by the people. Those who happened to be in control of the army become the rulers of the country. This simple definition is not adequate. It reminds us that democracy is people rules. But if we use this definition in an unthinking manner, we could end up calling almost every government that holds an election a democracy. That could be very misleading. Every government in contemporary world wants to be called a democracy. Even if it is not so, that is why we need to carefully distinguish between a government that is a democracy and one that pretends to be one. So now let's discuss the four features of democracy. First feature of democracy: major decision by elected leaders. In a democracy, the final decision-making power must rest with those elected by the people. For example, in Pakistan, General Parvez Musharraf led a military coup in October 1919. He overthrew a democratically elected government and declared himself the chief executive of the country. Later, he sent his designation to president, and in 2002, he held a referendum in the country that granted him a 5-year extension. Pakistani media, human rights organizations and democracy activists say that the referendum was based on malpractice and fraud. In August 2002, he issued a legal framework order that amended the Constitution of Pakistan. According to this order, the President can dismiss the national and provincial assemblies. The work of the civilian cabinet is supervised by a National Security Council, which is dominated by military officers. After passing this law, elections were held to the national and provincial assemblies. So, Pakistan has election. Elected representatives have some power, but the final power rested with military officer and General Musharraf himself. Clearly, there are many reasons why Pakistan under General Musharraf should not be called a democracy. Therefore, this gives us the first feature. In a democracy, the final decision-making power must rest with those elected by the people. Second feature: free and fair electoral competition. A democracy must be based on a free and fair election, where those currently in power have a fair chance of losing. For example, in China, elections are regularly held after every 5 years for electing the country parliament. The National People's Congress has the power to appoint the president of the country. It has nearly 3,000 members elected from all over China. Some members are elected by the army. Before contesting election, a candidate needs the approval of the Chinese Communist Party. Only those who are members of the Chinese Communist Party or 8 smaller parties allied to it were allowed to contest elections held in 2002 and 2003. The government is always formed by the Communist Party. Another example: since its independence in 1930, Mexico held elections after every 6 years. Till 2000, every election was won by a party called PRI, Institutional Revolutionary Party. Opposition parties did contest election but never managed to win. The PRI was known to use many dirty tricks to win election. All those who were employed in government office had to attend its party meeting. Teachers of government school used to force parents to vote for the PRI. Media largely ignored the activities of opposition political parties expect to criticize them. Sometimes the polling booths were shifted from one place to another in the last minute, which made it difficult for people to cast their vote. The PRI spent a large sum of money in the campaigns for its candidate. After reading this example, we get a sense that we cannot. There are many problems here. In China, the elections do not offer the people any serious choice. They have to choose the ruling party and the candidate approved by it. Can we call this a choice? In the Mexican example, people seem to rarely have a choice, but in practice, they had no choice. There was no way the ruling party could be defeated, even if people were against it. There are not fair elections. This gives us the second future. A democracy must be based on a free and fair election where those currently in power have a fair chance of losing. Third future: one person, one vote, and one value. In a democracy, each adult citizen must have one vote and each vote must have one value. Example: until 2015, in Saudi Arabia, women did not have the right to vote. Estonia has made its citizenship rules in its a way that people belonging to Russia minority find it difficult to get the right to vote. In Fiji, the electoral system is such that the vote of an indigenous Fiji has more value than that of an Indian Fijian. Democracy is based on a fundamental principle of political equality. So, this gives us the third feature of democracy. In a democracy, each citizen must have one vote and each vote must have one value. Fourth feature: rule of law and respect for rights. A democratic government rules within limits set by constitutional law and citizen rights. For example, Zimbabwe attained independence from white minority rule in 1980. Since then, the country has been ruled by ZANU-PF, the party that led the freedom struggle. Its leader, Robert Mugabe, ruled the country since independence. Elections were held regularly and always won by ZANU-PF. President Mugabe was popular but also used unfair practice in election. Over the year, his government changed the constitution several times to increase the power of the president and make him less accountable. Opposition party workers were harassed and their meetings disrupted. Public protests and demonstrations against the government were declared illegal. There was a law that limited the rights to criticize the president. Television and radio were controlled by the government and gave only the ruling party version. There were independent newspapers, but the government harassed those journalists who were against it. The government ignored some court judgments that went against it and pressurized judges. He was forced out of office in 2017. Example of Zimbabwe showed that popular approval of the ruler is necessary in a democracy, but it is not sufficient. Popular government can be undemocratic. Popular leader can be autocratic. If we wish to assess a democracy, it is important to look at the election, but it is equally important to look before and after the election. Similarly, there are some conditions that apply to the way a government is run after the election. A democratic government cannot do whatever it likes, simply because it has won an election. So this gives us the fourth feature of democracy. A democratic government rules within limits set by constitutional law and citizen rights. So through this example of four feature, of democracy as a form of government. Accordingly, democratic is a form of government in which rulers elected by the people take all the major decisions. Election offer a choice and fair opportunity to the people to change the court rulers. This choice and opportunity is available to all the people on the equal base, and the exercise of this choice lead to a government limited by various rules of the constitution and citizen rights. Okay, that's all for today. So student, go through this lesson and read it carefully. Hope all of you have understand about what is democracy. Thank you.